Joe. Just realised Amber and Holly are upstairs having their own bedtime stories, so I've still got time to read another chapter. So we'll go for chapter 27, A Most Exciting Night. If only we can creep up the slippery slip that turns right round and round in the middle of the trunk and get to Moonface's at the top, we should be able to help him, said Joe, feeling about for the trapdoor. I wonder why Moonface didn't slip down it himself, said Beth. Oh, he'd think that there'd be plenty of red goblins at the bottom of the tree ready to catch him when he flew out of the trapdoor, said Joe. But I don't believe that they know about the slide. He found the trapdoor and swung it open. Hold it open for me whilst I climb in, he said. Beth held it. Joe began to climb up. But dear me, it was most terribly slippery. He simply couldn't manage to get up the slippery slip at all. As fast as he climbed up the little way, he slid down it again. He groaned. Oh, this is awful. We can never get up this way. I shall keep slipping down all the time. Let me try, said Beth eagerly. So Joe slid out of the trapdoor and Beth crept in. But it was just the same for her as for Joe. The slide was far too steep and slippery to be climbed. Wish, 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 said the trees nearby. Beth ran to one, put her arms around its trunk and pressed her ear to it, and she listened. Tell the squirrels to go, whispered the leaves. Tell the squirrel to go. Oh, Red Squirrel, you go up, said Beth at once. Can you manage to, do you think? Oh, yes, said the squirrel. I have claws on my feet to hold with, and I'm used to climbing. But what's the use of me going? I'm not clever enough to make plans with Moonface. Wish, 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 said the trees loudly. Joe pressed his ears to one. The squirrel can throw a rope down the slippery slip, whispered the tree. Oh, of course, said Joe in delight. Why didn't I think of it? Tell us, said the girls. Joe told them. The squirrel must climb the slide to the top. He must ask Moonface for the rope that is let down for the cushions. But instead of letting it down through the branches of the tree, he must let it down through the slide inside. Then we can hang on and be pulled up. Oh, that's a really good idea, said Beth. Shh, said Joe, as he heard a shout from a goblin up the tree. We don't want them to guess what we're doing. The goblins are coming down, whispered Franny in alarm. Oh, I can hear them. What shall we do? We'd better get inside the trapdoor and sit at the bottom of the slippery slip as quiet as mice, whispered Joe. Go in first, Squirrel, and climb up. You know what to do, don't you? Yes, said the squirrel, and he disappeared up the slide, digging his sharp claws into it, just as if he were climbing up the outside of the tree trunk. Joe pushed Beth inside and then Franny. He climbed in himself and shut the trapdoor just in time. 3 goblins jumped down to the foot of the tree and began hunting round about. I know I heard someone, said one of them. Well, so long as we don't let them pass us up the tree, they can't do much, said another with a laugh. Ha ha! I don't think you heard anyone. It was just the trees whispering. Wish, 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 said the trees at once. There! What did I tell you? Said the goblin. They jumped back into the boughs of the faraway tree, and the children hugged one another and chuckled. I wonder if the squirrel has got up to the top of the slide yet, said Joe. As he spoke, a little sound came down the slide, a soft, slinky sound, and something suddenly touched them. Oh, a snake! Cried Beth in alarm. Don't be silly. Oh, it's the rope that the good little squirrel has sent down us, said Joe, feeling it. Now we'd better go up one at a time, for Moonface will never be able to pull us all up at once. Franny went first. She was hauled all the way up the slide. It was very strange, so dark and quiet. At last she reached the top. Moonface was there, red-faced from pulling the rope. A light burned in his funny round room. He was simply overjoyed to see Franny. He hugged her, and then he sent down the rope for Beth. She came up, and then Joe. If you can see the picture there of Moonface. Don't make too much noise, said Moonface in a low voice as he hugged them all. The goblins are outside everyone's door. Oh, Moonface, we're so sorry you're captured like this, said Joe. Couldn't you have slid down the slide and escaped? Or did you think that there might be goblins at the bottom? Well, I did, said Moonface, but I also thought that if I slid down, I'd be leaving all my friends behind in the tree, and that seemed a mean thing to do. Oh yes, it would be rather mean, said Joe, to save yourself and leave the others. Moonface, what can we help you to do? Well, I simply don't know, said Moonface. I've thought and I've thought, but I can't think of anything really good at all. Oh, it's a pity Silky isn't here, said Joe. We could talk it over with her then. She's clever. Oh, we can't possibly get to her, said Moonface. She's locked in just as I am. Joe! Moonface, said Franny suddenly, her face red with excitement. I've thought of a way to help. What? Cried the others. Well, couldn't the red squirrels slip down the slide out of the trapdoor and take a note to the elves in the woods, said Franny. Do you remember how we helped them when we first came to the woods, and they said they would always be pleased to help us if we wanted them? Yes, but how could they help? Asked Moonface doubtfully. Nobody quite knew, but Joe suddenly nodded his head and gave a squeal. Shh, said everyone at once. Sorry, said Joe, but I really have got an idea at last. Listen. The red squirrels can tell the elves to come up here in crowds. We'll pull them up on the rope. Then Moonface can shout out to the goblins outside that he'll tell them the magic spells that they want to know. And when they open the door, the elves and all of us can pour out and overpower the goblins. Oh, that's a splendid idea, said Moonface, looking at Joe in admiration. Simply wonderful, said the girls. Joe was pleased. And we'll unlock everyone's door and they can all join in, he said. My goodness, this is going to be exciting. Can you see how dreadfully angry the angry pixie will be? And Mr. What's-his-name? Ooh, those goblins had better watch out. Everyone chuckled. The red squirrel touched Joe's knee. Will you give me the note then? He said. I know where Mr. Whiskers lives and I will take the letter to him and let him call all the elves together. Joe took out his pencil and wrote a note on Moonface's paper. He folded it and gave it to the red squirrel, who folded it even smaller and tucked it inside his cheek. That's in case I get caught by the goblins, he said. They'll never think of looking for a note inside my cheek. He sat on his bushy tail, gave himself a push, and set off down the slippery slip at a tremendous pace. Franny giggled. Oh, his tail is his cushion, she said. Oh, isn't he a darling? I do hope he'll find Mr. Whiskers all right. Well, we'd better just sit quietly and wait, said Moonface. I don't want the goblins opening my door and seeing you all here. They'll know we've got a plan then. We brought you some of the meal that you didn't eat this afternoon, said Beth, and she unpacked the bag. Here are some sandwiches, some cakes, and some toffee. Oh, we'll all have some, said Moonface, and I've got some pop cakes too. So they sat round quietly on Moonface's curved sofa and bed and chairs, and ate and whispered, waiting for the squirrels to come back with Mr. Whiskers and the elves. Whatever would happen then? Ooh. So I wonder, did any of you think that perhaps they would get help from the elves? Did anyone think of that one? So now the elves are going to come. What do you think is going to happen next? Chapter 8. The Red Goblins Get a Shock. I bet they do. All right. I'll read you tomorrow. Bye.